Hey, welcome back to another week of small groups. Hopefully you have had a good week so far and you're coming to hang out at small groups and doing life with your friends and loved ones here at the church. And so, or you're leading a group in your own home, and that's pretty cool too. So in any event, we got some questions to answer or to talk about this week's message. We're still in our series called Why, answering some big questions. And so the big question we're answering, or that was answered this week in Sunday's message, was why die to ourselves? And so the first question we want to start off, because we want to get kind of a foundation of what we're even talking about. So why don't you discuss as a group, what does dying to yourself really mean? And just take a couple minutes and we'll meet back here. Okay, so the next question is, it'll seem a little off topic, but it's gonna kind of make everything come back together. So, and it's gonna be kind of a two-part question. So the first part I want you to talk about is what gives you value, or what do you think makes you valuable? And make this personal. Like you'll hear some good stuff, you'll hear some bad stuff. Not like bad stuff, but like stuff that you think, oh, that shouldn't make me feel valuable. But for example, I listed off some things like being a follower of Christ, being a dad, being a husband, being a pastor, but then also like being an athlete, being a musician, or having my hairdo look good, things like that. So there's gonna be some really good stuff, and then also some kind of silly stuff that makes us feel valuable. So talk about that. That's the first question. And then part B of this section is, what do you find valuable? So the first part is, what do you think makes you valuable, or gives you value? And then the next part is, what do you find valuable? And so talk about those two things, and you're gonna see that they kind of relate, and there's a purpose for that, and we're gonna get to it after this next question. Ready, set, go. Okay, so as you're discussing those things, you might have started realizing subconsciously or out loud with your group that Christ and the church sometimes aren't as high on our value list as we think they are. And we're wondering, why is that? And also being a Christ follower isn't as high on our makes us valuable list as we think it is. And so for some of us it is, but for some of us we're realizing right in this moment that it's really not. And so we gotta beg the question, why is that? Because it's probably the most valuable thing about us. Not probably, it is the most valuable thing about us, is that we were created in God's image, and we've been called to help in the grand scheme and the grand plan that God has. And so that's so important, and that's a big part of who we are, and it's the most valuable thing about us. So why is that not super high, and why is being a football fan maybe higher in some of our lives? Okay, so here's the question I want us to ask, and I want us to dive into this a little bit deep. And how do we change, or how do we turn Christianity from being something that we do to being something that we are? And so I don't want to just do church. I don't want to just check things off the box. I want to be a Christ follower. How do we change Christianity from something that we do into something that we are? Ready, set, go. Okay, so this is the last question. And if you've made it this far, that's great. If you haven't, that's also great. It means you've talked for a long time about all the other things. But here's the last question. And it's going to kind of tie everything together. We talked about what dying to ourselves means, what we find value in, and how can we make being a Christian a part of who we are. It's something that gives us value and not just something that we do. And so the last question here, and it's got another kind of sub-question. I don't know why I like doing that, but the question is, why must we die to ourselves? That's the big question. It's the whole point of the message. Why must we die to ourselves? And then the secondary question is, if we're dying to ourselves, what are we living for? If we're dying to ourselves, what are we living for? And you can also kind of talk about this. Why does discussing what brings value to us, or what we find valuable, have to do with all this? And so I've got an answer for you at the end. If you are wondering why I'm talking about value and all that kind of stuff, but I'm sure you're going to get to it anyway. So ask those questions. Why must we die to ourselves, and what are we living for? Ready, set, go. Okay, well that wraps it up. Thanks for joining us this week for small groups. Hope you had an amazing conversation. And you're like, wait, Brett, you were gonna say something. Okay, I will. Here's what kind of wraps it up, and this is why I was talking about value, why we talked about value on Sunday, and why we're talking about dying to ourselves. Because you will sacrifice in your life for whatever you find most valuable. And if you're sacrificing for your job, if you're sacrificing for your favorite sports team, if you're sacrificing even for your family above God, then we've got our priorities mixed up. And so we should be dying to ourselves daily. Why? Because we find God immensely valuable to us. And we find our value to be all about Him and how we are created in His image. And so we use this example in our small group is, why would you go to the gym? And the person I asked answered, well, I want to be fit. And I said, well, why don't you just go on a run? Or why don't you just do push-ups at your house? And they said, well, I like the equipment in the gym because it has cardio stuff, it has weights, it has all this kind of stuff. And so I said, so you find the gym valuable to you, right? And so you'll make a sacrifice to go to the gym. So until we find Jesus immensely valuable to us, and until we find our value in Him, we won't make the sacrifices necessary to be Christ followers. And so find value in Jesus because it's there, and find value in yourself from Jesus because it's there also. We love you. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.